I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for Monday, October 16th, 2016 to order. First order of business is public forum. Anyone wishing to address the board in public forum? Hearing none, let's move on to item 2, and that is to approve minutes. 2.1 would be the regular meeting minutes of September 18th, 2017.
September 17th.
Well, let's see. Yeah, it was September 17th, but it says September 18th here. So, is there a motion to approve the minutes of September 17th?
So moved.
Second. Comments, questions, additions, deletions, changes?
Clarification, actually.
Certainly.
On page 4, there was a discussion right in the middle, just about below. Dr. Friedman said that was the total cost. It was all paid through prime. Below that, the next sentence below that, it says, Mr. Federici knows the town is doing well with regard to standardized tests, particularly in math. And then there was a brief discussion about the test. Actually, I asked Dr. Freeman to explain the difference between the standardized tests and the classroom evaluations, which he did.
Okay.
And I just appreciate if that were noted.
Fine. Others?
I have one on page second paragraph from the bottom. Mr. Sands said that with regard to the current budget at the end of August, they've expended 100.2% of the budget compared to 9.1% this time last year. I think it was 10.2. I don't think they've spent that much.
No.
Page 3.
Great.
Yeah.
If they have, I got some explaining to do.
It's going to be a long year.
Any others?
Move their acceptance.
None? Move the acceptance. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None. Good. Item 3, correspondence, standing building committee minutes. Well, even though Ken and I were at that meeting, Mike, I think you stayed for the substance of the meeting, but so why don't you...
I stayed for the rest. I was a lucky guy.
Go
who
ahead.
got to stay, which I always do. So, just a quick recap. One of the agenda items, which is usually not the case, is that there was a added agenda item for discussion with candidates for first selectman. This, I think, happened about a week or a couple days before, and you were both able to make it. Actually, Lou was able to make it as well. And the main concerns, there were two that I really wanted to bring up from this. One is the number of volunteers currently that are serving on this committee. This has been an ongoing issue. This is not really much, it's not a secret. I think both town committees, I know I could speak for ours, and I'm sure on the other side as well, both have been looking for candidates for the Standing Building Committee and the volunteers. It's a committee that's 7 regular members and 2 alternate members, and right now they have 4 regular members and no alternates. So they're really just getting by with 4 people. The problem with that is that there's a lack of expertise, simply that 4 people can't provide that 9 people can. And I had made comments later during this agenda item that I had served when there were 9 and how much more knowledgeable and how much more resource there was on that committee. There were several comments that were made about the complexity of the projects and the fact that the committee members have never been political, although parties usually do need to nominate them. It can come from either side or independent. I think that's how I got originally involved in this town, is just being, asking to serve, and I was on the building committee. So that's one, is the number of members. The second one was really oversight of the committee does for both school and town projects. The school seems to be much, they have a lot more projects, I think, overall, building projects with all the schools that need that expertise. But the town also has projects, but it seems like the facility director for the Board of Ed is there on a more regular basis, helping the committee understand the projects and the details of them, as opposed to the town, which usually has had department heads or, for example, the police or fire chief or, other town members that are leading those projects. And there was some recommendation that the town designate somebody or have someone more regularly at those meetings to go over town projects so that there's an equal amount of expertise that's shared by the building committee. There were a lot of reasons that were given of why the building committee is important in town, but ultimately I think that's kind of a summary of what the concerns were by the chairman, Scott Ornstein, which I think he stated very, very well. The building committee's backed him up. And I think this is somewhat of a request also for anybody in the viewing audience, and maybe we do something, or as a town, or maybe the two committees maybe get something in the paper about committees that are looking for volunteers. Not just, I know that in the papers there is a small vacancies, and I think it gets overlooked. I think there really could be some sort of an article or something more substantial about the need for volunteers in the community. We have a lot, but there are expertise-based committees around town that really need people to come out, because it's building committees. I'm trying to think of other committees that are out there that have that kind of knowledge and expertise that would be really good to have. So that was one agenda item. That was really with both of the candidates. Just very quickly on the Baldwin Middle School windows and doors, we talked about window color last time. Assuming that you all read the minutes, there has been another issue that has arisen. I'm going to tell you right now that our concern would be, well, who's going to pay for it? That's not, although it's our concern, we shouldn't have to worry about that, because this particular issue is going to be covered and should be covered completely by the contractor. Ultimately, there was an issue with the egress windows, and they were not meeting the specifications, which means that, forget about the color now. Now they have a specification issue that they have to be replaced, and about 90 of them would have to be replaced. So there was discussion on that. Melissa Jones roof project, we could go back for questions if you all have any. Melissa Jones roof project, the solar specifications that were discussed at one point being put in the project will be added in, and it was something that was going to be part of the performance contracting, but now it's going to be put as part of the project so that it definitely happens as part of the bid package. Not that it's going to happen completely, but it's got to be bid first. And then the third thing and the last thing I was going to bring up is on the electrical upgrades. I was a little bit confused by, and I don't know if anybody else was, but the electrical upgrades for Baldwin, Jones, and Cox, the first portion of that, of the meeting minutes, talked about an executive summary of various options and costs and pros and cons. That wasn't so much for the electrical, that was for the mechanical upgrades, because later on in that section it talks about proposals received, and there was unanimous acceptance of proposals for electrical work. And if you read the acceptance of the proposals, and yet there was going to be some discussion in November about the pros and cons, it seems like they were ahead of themselves. It's the mechanical that they were talking about as far as the pros and cons and costs. So the electrical service has to happen for that other work to be done on the HVAC and the mechanical. And that electrical work would be done in summer of 2018. There were a couple of bills actually that were tabled largely because of that window issue. So I did want to note that the committee saw that as an issue. And then the performance contracting, I should actually report on that because that was one of my questions that we all keep asking. There was a meeting on September 15th, and representatives from Johnson Controls, ECG, and Kohler Ronan, who was the Board of Ed's recommended resource to look at all of that, the contracts. They discussed concerns, and ultimately they agreed it would be a positive cash flow and felt it was prudent to move forward, and the Board of Education was going to consider acting on their October meeting. Maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that when the Board of Ed reports, but I don't know where that stands with the Board of Education at this point moving forward, but it was really to obtain financing for a CREB application, which kicks off the solar portion. That's a mouthful, but try to keep it.
How much money is involved in this Windows issue with Baldwin? We haven't heard from Anuli yet, have we?
No, we have not. I think that is the next step, is what they are on the hook for. I know that there was some talk about Anuli confirming the correct windows and start making arrangements to have the work done Otherwise, it would need to be performed by others at their expense. So this is not a cost to the town at all, but I don't know to what level. I don't know that number.
Is that a project that they could do during the school year, or was it something like that?
No, they would, it's my understanding that they'd have to wait until next summer.
Okay.
Because of the complexity of the work, you'd have to have the students out. Yeah.
If the solar panels are now part of the bid package that's going out, does that mean it's not going to fall under the performance contracting review?
I think it was felt to be more efficient to make sure that it gets into the project in case the contract for the performance contracting for any reason does not move forward. It was believed by, I believe, the building committee and the Board of Education to move forward with solar on the Melissa Jones project regardless, so that it would be handled. And if it gets pulled out of the performance contract, it gets pulled out of the performance contract. Otherwise, it would be just part of that whole process. But they wanted to make sure that that was a project that was done as part of the roof.
And then, based on the cries for help that were given there, I couldn't help but think that if they had a full if you had a full complement of people, if there were 7 plus 2, might that have mitigated the need to go to performance contracting in the first place? Would be because they clearly can't keep up, and so we've rolled, which makes performance contracting almost a necessity by default. If we had a full complement.
I understand what you're saying, and I mentioned this during that agenda item. Is that what the building committee does when it's full complement? Is it provides expertise that you don't need to hire an owner's rep for, or a clerk of the works, or someone who is an additional staff member to oversee all these projects. The volunteers have the expertise that they're able to do all of that and not have to bring another staff member in terms of time. I think the performance contracting is if you have the expertise, let's put it this way, I don't think we would have had the issues with the contract review as we ended up having, because we just didn't have anyone on the building committee that had the knowledge. But if we had a full complement, they may have had more knowledge, so it didn't have to go through this review, re-review, and another re-review. I think this is, I don't want to say over their head, but it's something still very new. So I don't think a full complement on the building committee would have mitigated the performance contracting issue. But the contract review, I think it might have.
It seems to me we're rather handicapped on a facilities director on the town side, because we do have one on the Board of Education, somebody handling facilities. Why can't we get the town to either do rotating chairmanship, rotating representative, so that someone can, so that one of the department heads can carry the message back, and the Board of Selectmen can be, fully on board on this and fully attuned to what's going on?
I think that the town, to the town's, I don't want to necessarily answer for them, but they do have a facility director. What ends up happening, the town has a somewhat different process. So the Board of Ed has school projects, and Cliff is really instrumental in all of those projects, and he's day to day. The facility director for the town, it's in my view, it's always been more widespread. So you've got 7 schools and the Board of Ed offices, and what you need for all those are fairly similar in terms of school facilities.
Consolidated.
And yeah, somewhat the same needs. With the town, you have different buildings, and they're spread out all over the town. What's ended up happening is the process has been more, well, you live with the building chief. You live with the building chief, Mr. and Mrs. Department Head. So you know what you need, and you can usher those projects through. And it's been the process in the past that usually it's just kind of like, well, what does the building committee think? Oh, they're okay with it, great. So there's not the full review. So it's a process issue. It's not so much they don't have the people to do it. It's that they kind of steer towards the people who run the buildings, not one particular central person.
Do they make an appearance?
Yeah, they have.
I think one thing that needs to be noted, at one point there was a department-level facilities, department manager-level facilities director. That function has now been combined into engineering, public works, into Jim Portley's bailiwick. So
that was the largest.
That was the largest one. So originally Jim was just the department head for engineering, assumed responsibility for Public Works, and also facilities. So there may be it may be being spread too thin and/or may not have the level of expertise that would normally have in that role. So, the way Cliff does, because that's what Cliff does, right?
I think it was a good point to bring up for, for the future leadership of the town. So.
Anything else? Good. Pension committee minutes? Anything there? I had nothing. Although I did have one quick question. Old business, Mitch Goldbach, Director of Human Resources, reported there were no changes this month, but up to 5 new employees in September. So we're hiring 5 new employees in September, which we anticipate are going to be going on the defined contribution plan as opposed to defined benefit plan? Correct. Okay. Anything else?
Actually, come and join us at this meeting.
Yeah. Well,
I must be with Peter.
That's,
oh, man. All right. Let's move on to item 4. Review and accept the report of expenditures for the Board of Education for September 2017. Christine, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome as the presenter. Is there anything you'd like to bring to our attention?
Sure, well, I'll just go through the numbers, and then if you have any questions,
Okay.
feel free.
We'll do.
Expenditures for the month of September were $6,488,589.13. This is roughly the same as last year, up slightly, 21.17% of budget as compared to 19.42% last year. The warrant presented was for $2,706,632.72. For the most part, salaries were about the same as last year, as was transportation. And you'll note that employee benefits and purchase services were up. These were both really due to the timing of payments. Tuition was up, which again is just special ed as usual. It's just very difficult to budget. We had a few new students placed. There's also timing comes into play here as well, but tuition is higher than expected. Supplies and materials were lower than last year, also due to timing of payments and encumbrances. In terms of capital, the percent of budget expended was higher than last year. In that is the technology lease purchases, which there'll be reimbursement occurring from that. And also we had the planned expense of the Adams renovation for the addition of some special ed rooms. And we did run into some unforeseen, the rooms were supposed to all be on the outside of the building, allowing for proper ventilation, and when the engineer came in, that wasn't possible, just the way the setup works. So we needed a system in place that would allow for proper ventilation of those rooms. So that also accounts for the higher variance. Can you pass those around? Yes. The tuition report? Oh, yeah, tuition. So you'll see there. Yeah, you can come in here too.
You said we did.
Yeah, yeah.
So on the tuition report, it's slightly better than what I had presented last month. I found that I had double counted in a student, which made a slight difference. So right now, our projection is that we will be about $71,000 over budget in tuition. Bless you. I'm being really conservative on our excess cost, because we don't know what's going to happen with it. So this is all really subject to change depending on what happens with the state budget and the excess cost grant. So our counts are, we're up a little bit from what our budget was for private tuition, but we're down for the public tuition. So it evens out. The costs aren't necessarily equal, but the student count is equal.
So when you say you're being conservative on the excess cost, are you using a number lower than 70% reimbursement then assumption, or what do you mean when you say that?
So I'm figuring on, I went down to 68%, and then there's one student that's a really high cost that we're not 100% sure that we're going to get that amount, so I've kind of backed off on what I think we're going to get. So
Right.
at this point, I'm going a lot lower than what I'm hoping it's going to end up being.
All right, thank you.
We now have 2 students from out of district coming in. I thought we had one last time.
We have two, no, there was 2 on the last.
Okay.
Two of the last report. We have 2 students out of district that are attending our programs. 2 of our special programs.
This tuition on page 13 of the warrants unforeseen. It's a big one.
Page 13.
No,
August tuition.
no, that was.
That was foreseen.
Yes, that one. Yes, we knew about that one.
That's 1 month.
Yes.
There was the correction too, I mean, after combing through the warrants, the ACES.
Right. For the first few items for ACES for the behavior services consultant, ACES had an error in their billing. They returned that check to us and rebilled it, and it's about half the cost. So, but this was already issued, and so I'm reporting on what we paid, but it will be adjusted.
That's for one consult or for all?
For all of those for
All the
July.
summer, the July one.
All the ACES for July, they billed it at the wrong rate. Per the contract is a reduced rate for the summer services. So, and they billed it at the regular rate. So they've corrected it.
This, excuse me, on page 15 as well, this $44,000 tuition, or $44,000 figure to the old Saybrook Board of Ed is for one tuition for the 17-18 year?
Yes,
One tuition,
yes. It's an annual payment for one
student.
student.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, quick question. Back to that sheet you just handed out. On the top line, the DCF place, there are 3 students. The projected cost, when we do the excess cost, it's 4 times the average student cost when it kicks in, right? Or is it 4.5? What's the 5 times? I thought it was 4.
No, it's for DCF place, it's 4.5 times, I believe.
4.5 on the DCF? Okay. Okay, I think that answers my question. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Question.
So, in the Board of Ed minutes from September 11, there, Mr. Bowden, and you may have already touched this. No, you were talking about student census, but Mr. Bowden gave an update on the certified staffing changes. Welcome, Mr. Bluss, welcome all the new faculty members. So, have there been any positions filled beyond what was budgeted? And are there any open positions that were in the budget?
There's that one that was put on hold.
Yeah, there was
There's a
one, but it was only,
0.6.
yeah, it was not a full FTE, it was a partial FTE that has not been filled.
And is that still under
It's on hold.
evaluation?
Yeah.
It's on hold.
Yeah.
It's on-
I
So
mean,
sort of a partial
essentially
FTA.
not knowing what's happening with the state budget.
Okay, so it's like a half-time
making
position.
do without.
Yeah.
Okay, and what was that,
25.
what was just, what area was that expected to
Social
fill?
Social workers?
Social worker, okay.
Special education position at Baldwin is a vacant position, I think, right?
Matt, hold on, Ken, just one other. So then we can't get away from this darn energy performance contract. In the operations committee minutes, I thought I saw this when Mike was talking about this, and I didn't realize it was in the school board. Mylone McBroom was invited to attend.
Yeah, that's a typo, and we've corrected it. It's
Oh.
Kohler Ronan.
That was Kohler
Okay,
Ronan.
so we're not bringing another engineer
No,
for a
No,
minute.
it was just a typo.
It's a good typo.
We wanted to be
They're like
extra
class. Mylone is
They're,
like
they're a good firm, I just don't think they'd have much to input on this, yeah.
It's all right. They saw that revenue flash through their sky like an asteroid. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Site improvement, maybe you alluded to it in your introductory remarks, but site improvement is at 91% expended
How much
for
is
the year,
encumbered? How much is encumbered?
Yeah.
as opposed to
Like I touched on.
40, you did touch on that.
With the Adams improvements.
All Adams,
Is
basically.
it all Adams?
There are some other
significant
small things, some
Adams.
carpeting, some other capital things that were done, but most of that was for Adams.
Jones, some stuff at Jones.
Yes, there was some.
Flooring.
Yeah, there was some
Yep,
flooring
flooring.
at Jones.
It's in the warrant.
And you've got 4 areas that are more modestly increased, but they are increased by about 4 or 5 points, 1 by 10. Legal services are up, which is this one. Security is up appreciably. And of course, tuition, which we've referred to earlier. And could this be phone? It is phone. Phone is up by about 10%. What accounts for that? I think it's phone.
So legal, we are still doing, we have one negotiation still going on, one contract negotiation. So there's the legal bills a little bit higher than we were last year. Telephone, we have not received any of the E-rate or Universal Service Fund credits to date. We will be getting them, but so far we haven't seen
okay.
anything. And what else were you asking about?
Security.
Security.
Encumbrance.
That is, we did some camera installation at, and I'm not going to remember. Sorry.
Well, a significant portion of that is the encumbrances of $9,300 too, right?
Right, it's the budget.
Yeah, a budget of 22,000, so you back that in, that
I know
means
it has to do
really
with
19,000.
some additional camera installation, and I don't remember off the top of my head where it is. I can
That's fine.
get back to you on it.
I'm pretty sure it was in the building committee minutes. Baldwin,
Baldwin.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
They recently finished installation of the door access system and cameras. So
I wasn't.
I believe that was,
Wasn't sure, so I didn't
Yeah.
want to say thank you.
Can I jump back in? Sure. So in the warrants, there's a $175,000 for Adams HVAC. Does that
That's to
include?
do with that ventilation of having the interior rooms versus the exterior.
So does that mean that all the rooms are now air conditioned essentially? Or is that unrelated to that?
So it has, I don't know if it's just air conditioned, it has air flow, air movement. Because they're interior rooms, there was no airflow in there.
Okay.
So in order to get airflow in there, we had to do this extensive HVAC work.
So yeah, air conditioned is probably too casual of a word, but I mean, is it temperature controlled? Is it dehumidified? I mean, is any of that part of that? Mike? I look to you. I know this has been a big building committee day.
yeah, some days are like that, right?
So this is on.
I get, the question I have on that is just, is that part of?
14,
that
page 14.
Is that, I'm sorry.
That's out of capital, right?
Yeah, I'm not
That's
concerned
capital
about the
budget.
expense, I'm sort of curious as to the work.
Yeah. The HVAC is, it's usually got to be an airflow issue that's in spaces that are not conditioned, that don't have that type of system.
And
Or availability to fresh air.
Yeah, okay. And then right below that, there was $90,000 collectively, two invoices for basement renovations. Was that
That was
refitting
proposed.
rooms that are now
That
being
was for
pressed
the
into
special
service?
ed rooms. Those were planned expenditures.
Okay.
So they moved guidance
Those are on
office
the-
downstairs and put,
I also know that we've been
Upstairs.
affected by every form of wildlife.
yes.
When you look at page 17, every animal native to Guilford
That's removed.
has been removed, I
Yes.
gather.
Or is proactive before they get there.
Very
That's
proactive.
right.
Wasps, squirrels, ants,
just-
you know.
Does the HVAC
Mice,
expense have
skunk?
anything to do with, I noticed there's a lot of emergency calls.
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with the external classrooms at home? I'm looking at the bottom of
That's the
page
very-
one.
one in the
the
water
water report.
Two of the smaller
And it
ones
rolls
are
over
out.
onto page two.
No, and those are all mostly Baldwin ones. I don't remember exactly what the issue was at Baldwin.
Well, Baldwin has an ongoing
Yeah.
HVAC
Yeah.
issue,
Yeah,
so we all
that's
know
right.
that's just an issue.
Baldwin has.
Yeah.
Major renovation work in the Baldwin basement for program purposes for this. Okay. Trying to remember exactly what it was,
Baldwin
but it was
as
in
well?
the, yeah. I don't believe it went through the building committee necessarily. It was just upgrades that were done to those spaces for programming. They needed it for program space,
Okay.
and I could have sworn it was in the budget. As one of the items, it listed all the items that were going to be in the 17-18 capital.
It just struck me that emergency calls were something unplanned for that came up that needed to be addressed.
Well, yeah, and we still do not have an in-house HVAC person.
That's why.
We had hired somebody, and unfortunately, there was an injury, so we don't have a person again, so we have to contract out for all of our repairs. There's a few things that, somebody else may be able to do, but anything big, we really have to contract it out.
Well, at the rate we're going with the emergency calls, we should hire somebody quickly. Ken?
Did there used to be an
Question.
HVAC person?
Yes, we do have an in-house HVAC person. Unfortunately, right now, he's out with an injury. We have
It's
had.
not like he was new, there was one prior to.
We had one, he left, we hired somebody,
Okay.
was only there a short time, and then he
And then he
got
got hurt.
injured, and now he's been out.
All right.
Any projection as to when he might return?
Not that I've heard.
Ken?
Yeah, a question on the public forum of the Board of Ed meeting on September 11th. Could you comment on these blips in the enrollment, late in the third grade, and there's some concern about third grade and fourth grade enrollment. Is this a factor we should be concerned with going forward into the next year?
Yeah, that particular grade has, since they entered kindergarten, was traditionally very low and lean. It's, not an indication that the other schools are following suit. There's other third grades that are very healthy. All of a sudden, there was an influx of students over the summer that were unplanned for. So we're still within the class sizes as set forth by the policy, but obviously nobody on the Board of Ed likes to see class sizes that large. There were a group of parents that came out to express, obviously, their concern over the large class sizes and to ask the board to consider adding a section for or a class for their grade, but really leaving the current number of fourth grade teachers in place for the following school year. But no, I don't think there's cause for concern.
Thank you. Temporary thing.
Anything else? No?
Just going back to the technology lease, you said it was going to be reimbursed. When do we expect that reimbursement? Because right now, we're kind of floating that, we're floating that until we get the reimbursement
Right.
back. So.
We are waiting for one other payment that we made, the payment to clear, because we have to show proof that it was paid and the check is cleared. And then we'll be sending that off, I'm hoping this week. And then we'll submit for reimbursement. And we usually get it pretty quickly, so we should have it, I'm hoping by the end of the month.
End of the month. Okay.
Anything further?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to accept the bills from the Board of Ed for the month of September in the amount of $6,505,813?
Moved?
Second, someone? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None. Review and approve report of expenditures for town government for September 2017. Mary Jane, how are you? What would you like to bring to our attention?
Well, at first, I thought I'd like to start with a little update on the state budget.
Okay.
The governor submitted a new proposal. You might have heard it on the news. And so none of these numbers obviously are set in stone, and they'll be different when we wake up tomorrow, but I just wanted to give you a general idea of where we've come from and where we are. So the original governor's budget put us at a $3.9 million deficit. The legislature's budget that was vetoed would have been a $30,000 deficit. And the governor's latest proposal on the table gives us a $374,000 excess. So the point to my story is we are in such flux, we have no idea which way it's going, but that's where we stand as of today. We haven't received any state funding, and I don't expect any at this point, but I just thought I'd let you know. We're looking at the numbers every day, but that's where we stand at the moment. So I just thought I'd start with that.
That's a significant difference.
Yeah.
The legislators collectively must have gotten to the governor.
Yeah, so it's just a number on a piece of paper as far as I'm concerned today, but you might want to know.
Thank you. All right, what else you got? Or you just want to go into questions?
Well, we can start with revenues.
Okay.
We are 1/4 of the way through the year and trending pretty favorably to where we were last year. Our tax collection is a little higher. We did have a significant amount of tax payments made prior to July 1, over $8 million, which is the highest we've seen. So that really counted for the difference there. It was, I almost thought it was a typo, but it was correct. So we're a little bit more there. So, tax collection is always very steady and strong here in Guilford, and it's just continuing and such. Not much else to really report unless you have some questions. The selectmen look like they're way down, but that is such a small budget. It's hard to know. It's even the assessor's office is lower. It's really just copies, like I said. But unless you have some specific questions, everything is pretty much where we would expect it to be right about now. And we are, about 50%, 52% for the year, including. Even including the state funding.
All right.
Park and Rec is up.
Yes, Park and Rec is up. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out where they were up, though. What was, and that's
In engineering, it's a small number, but
Yeah, it's hard to judge. With things like Park and Rec, the weather makes a big difference. We've had really good weather, and maybe that has helped. So it's really hard to say from year to year.
Okay.
That's why sometimes when we look at the percentages from year to year, we don't really understand what that difference is. Like in Park and Rec, it could be weather related.
Yeah, what was buried in last year's number
Right,
that we
right.
didn't know about.
Does Does the asterisk on the revenue for the golf just tell us basically that we're comparing apples to apples?
Correct, it's exactly
Okay.
what it is. I took out the transfer since the golf course will not be getting that transfer anymore. So instead of explaining that every month why the variance is so different, I figured I would just pull it out so you're looking apples to apples exactly.
Good. Fine. Any other questions on revenues?
No.
Similar story on the expenditure side. Things are tracking fairly normal for this time of year. I did report on IT last month that we're high because we're paying our munis bill annually instead of quarterly now. Not a lot of other variances. Registrar of Voters is high. We had the primary, so that accounted for that. Otherwise, I'm, grasping for straws to come up with, something, unless you have, any particular questions. Operating transfers are down mainly because, again, the golf course, normally we would make that transfer right away, and we don't have that in the budget, so we have not needed to make a transfer.
What's
yet.
left would be waste transfer?
Waste transfer.
Right.
Insurance is up.
It's really a timing issue.
Timing.
Of how we're paying the bills.
Just a quick question. Joe's not here, but on the golf course, on the expenditures, and I'm assuming that the commission made a conscious decision to spend more than they had originally budgeted in their advertising and public notice budget.
Yeah. There he is.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that difference is. I would
Okay.
have to look into that.
All right, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. And then Youth and Family Services. Part-time salaries are significantly ahead of budget. Is that a cause for concern throughout the year, or is that related
I think it's related to summer programs that they have.
programs? Okay, that's fine. That's where I was going. And then, what else there?
I'd just like to note on the golf course, the golf course, we don't have the other reports anymore, but they are reviewing the munis reports that they receive each year and approving invoices, so we kind of have them on the same type of process as other departments.
Wonderful. Okay. Good. That was it for me on expenditures. Anybody else? Mike?
Two particular line items, one in Health Department and one in Capital. In the Health Department, mosquito control. It says it's 100% expended, but there's an encumbrance, looks like maybe about 40% is encumbered. Is that for next spring? Do you know how that number gets divided up? We've spent about 12,000 of the 19.5.
Yeah, I
So
know
is
the
it because
contract
it's
is for
divided
the
by
full
season,
amount, but
or-
exactly how it's split up, I don't know, but I would.
It's more of
I
a
would
curiosity of how
Yeah.
they go through that process of how we get billed for that.
I'm not exactly sure.
And on the capital sidewalks, I think it's under engineering
Yeah.
sidewalks. It says that that's fully expended, but that's not encumbered. That's a full expenditure of 100%. So
Is that the 75,000?
75, yeah.
That's a transfer into another fund. It gets
Okay.
transferred into the sidewalk fund where it's expended through there.
Oh, okay. So it's not that we've expended it all
Correct.
and we're going to be in trouble if we have to replace a portion of sidewalk or something. It's
Correct.
being pulled.
Exactly.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
But I'll look into that mosquito question.
It's not, yeah, I asked it
Just
only
out of
because I
curiosity. I
was
understand.
wondering if it all is done at one point during the year or if it's spread out over a period of time to control purposes.
Right. It makes sense that it would be done again in the spring.
Yeah.
Because of the water. But I will find out.
Anything on special fund
Yeah.
weeklies or general fund weeklies?
Yeah.
What would that be?
If I can find it.
Yeah, it's right in front of you.
On special fund, it just raises in me I'm forever asking this. We haven't had a capital report update in the longest time. I checked it, and the last school capital was in February of 16. The last town capital was in November of 16, which is now a year old. So it's a year and a half. Are we going to be getting a capital update so that we can understand things like where is the money going on the Long Hill Road project? Is the skate park thing finished or partially finished? We're sort of operating in the dark.
No,
You say, oh yeah, well, there's a lot of money in
absolutely,
there.
and
It's reimbursed.
And I'll take full responsibility for that, trying to work through that. I did intend to have it for this time. We recently updated Munis, and we've had some glitches.
Really?
And I wasn't able to download the information I needed to update it for the quarter, which is why I didn't have it ready for this meeting. So I apologize for that. But we do have it through June. We have it being audited. It had been my hope to update it for the quarter to bring to you guys. So be sure to send that out to you right away.
All right, I'm expecting the same type of form, right? The capital form, the
Yeah,
document
yeah,
showed
I
all the
actually
various
have a
plans.
copy
The
of
long
it here.
spreadsheet?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm going to pile on here, but
Yeah.
the Long Hill Road, we were talking about a separate reconciliation on that.
They look like this.
Closed and, pardon me?
This was the capital for the town. That was the last one for the
Oh,
town.
right, yep. That's it.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the one. 216 and 217, I believe. Okay,
Yes.
right. But we do have the 5-year capital improvement plan. We
There you
have
go.
that.
How'd that wind up in that folder?
How to find a home for it. I have some questions on the general.
Yeah, I've been
Absolutely.
trying to bring all of that up to date, so,
Good, thank you.
because it hadn't been done for a while.
I'm sure there's an explanation for this, but it cost us for the golf course, to water the golf course, over $10,000
It's not unusual.
in the weekly warrants for the town general. Is that a cost that's spread over a couple of months, or is that 1 month?
It's probably over a month. It does fluctuate based on the temperature and the drought that we have, how much rain. I'd have to look specifically to see what time period that was for, but we typically build monthly. So.
Well, the invoice date was 8/18, so it's the middle of the summer, so
Yeah.
it's probably middle of July to the middle of August.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know exactly what the dates are, but it's most likely a month's time.
That could be a month's
It could be a
cost.
month's time. Takes quite a bit to water the course.
Mary Jane, just to refresh my memory, the second item down on the weekly warrants on general fund, the VFW post, the pass-through from the state of Connecticut.
That's the grant that we have for the VFW posted. The town is just a conduit for that
For the
money.
money to go through,
The
yeah.
VFW actually has the checkbook, manages the checkbook.
And we fly it,
And
just a
so
pass-through. That's what I thought.
that's 10% of the total grant fund. It's the second draw we've taken since that grant started. When I got here, we already had the first draw, and this is the second draw that I've taken for that. So it's really right now covering all of the legal fees and the drawings, but the construction bid has been awarded, and we're moving forward with that too. So the next time you see a number, it's going to be much larger
bigger.
because
That's-
we have a very aggressive construction schedule for that project. So you'll be seeing this coming through.
Right, and just to take a little left turn here, that construction is going to start shortly, right?
Yes.
Did I hear that the VFW had traditionally been a collection and distribution point for foods, for
Yes.
the food bank stuff?
Yes.
And we are looking for an alternative. So-
Last I know, we were still looking unless they found something while I
With
was
the
away.
VFW starting construction, we're looking for a replacement for the food bank stuff?
For the Thanksgiving drive.
The Thanksgiving drive.
Thanksgiving basket.
Oh, thanks, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, not the food bank, but the
Not the
Thanksgiving
food bank.
drive.
Yeah, as far as I know, that shouldn't really impact the collection point, okay? Because we're getting so close to Thanksgiving. So, I
But
think
you're
we'll
right,
be
they
okay.
were seeking,
Right.
they were seeking an alternate location.
Gotcha.
But I don't think it's going to impact at this point, Matt. Okay. Don't look at my glasses.
Back to Long Hill Road, just
Yep.
one, I want to clarify something.
Yes.
Last meeting, I could have sworn somebody said that the cost went down from 4 million to 3 point something million, the projected cost. Did anybody else hear that at the last meeting? What's that you're looking at?
This was the report that Jim passed out.
Jim Portley, I wasn't
I
at the
didn't get
meeting.
that.
It was like the day or two after our meeting, Tracy sent it around.
So it did come down by $1 million. And that explains the whole thing?
It came, well, what this says anyway is, it was,
Did you get that?
they had various bids ranging from the low of 3,324,000 to well over 4 million. So presumably there was a $1 million spread between the high and the low bid, and went with the low bid. So as this describes it, Guilford's responsible for 10%.
It doesn't say which one we went with.
Yeah, well, just judging from the rest of the paragraph, I'm presuming they went with the low bid, because if we're responsible for 10%, 335,000
and I
is
have seen
10% of that
and I have seen Trademark out there.
trademark.
Yeah.
Trademark is definitely the contractor, that's who you're seeing the monthly payments go to.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a couple little items. Mary Jane, in the special funds weekly warrant, we're paying a capital expense for an EV charging station. Is that the one behind the town hall?
Yes.
What, is that a monthly expense? What are we, once it's installed, what are we paying? Is that the utility bill?
That's for the electricity.
So we're paying $227, in this case, $227. That's roughly what it costs a month?
Depends on the usage.
Right. And is there any plan in the works to put a meter on that at some point?
We can't start charging until this coming spring or summer, until the 3 years are up.
Okay, so in other words, in consideration of some grant presumably?
It's a 3-year grant,
Okay,
and the grant was that the installation and the device itself was free,
okay.
as long as we did not charge for the usage for 3 years.
And if I'll use the word again, a meter gets installed, that's something that Northeast Utilities takes care of installing, or we got to go find a contractor?
No, it'll be installed.
They'll do it.
Yeah, and then you would use a credit card or a debit
Right.
card. Okay.
Right.
Right now, they just use it. Okay.
Okay. And on that same section, I had another expense. Oh, there's a $200 charge for inspecting the dog park. It's in capital, interestingly. What does that involve?
I don't know.
I mean, it's like, there's a lot of people inspecting it every day, I would imagine. I mean, once it's built, it's up, making sure the fence is intact. I mean, I'm kind of curious what. It seems like a low maintenance property.
Well, you're
I
probably
can
not far
assure-
off the mark where
I can
we need
assure
this
you,
fencing to be.
town inspector, we would waive that fee.
Somebody named Bruce Andrus, I guess, or yeah, it's got to be Bruce Andrus.
Honestly, I don't know. We'd have to
Okay.
check that out.
I don't know.
Just curious.
Yep, look into that.
Thanks.
I have a warrant question. General.
You didn't question the dog waste bags for $340.
Those I get. I understand those.
Okay.
We want people to use them,
Yes,
so
that's-
it's better to supply them.
It's one of our cheapest fees.
This animal population report that the state requires, it's
Yes.
a $5,600 expenditure? What do they do for us for that?
They don't do anything for us. We send them their portion of the fees. So we collect dog licensing fees and other fees and, so
Give them a portion
I don't
of
have
it.
a dog, but I think you spend like, what, $17 or more for a dog, and we keep 2. So
It's not that much in this town.
it's
Yeah, it's
or
not
it's
that
$6. It depends whether it's neutered or not, but whatever the
Yeah.
numbers are,
Neutered, that's right.
this is us returning to the state their portion of the collections that we've made.
Okay.
I have to ask this question. The invoice description on the Grass Island maintenance is foundation to take over Grass Island.
By force and violence.
And that's a kind of exactly what happened. We had an agreement with the Eagle Scout that he came in and fixed, and he got the foundation, the Guilford Foundation, to support him and to match the money that he collected. And I met with a representative from the Guilford Foundation, and they are willing to continue to raise funds and to continue to pay for the expenses. Unfortunately, we have vandalism, that type of stuff. So what we did was we took the balance of the fund that we had from that project and donated it back to the Guilford for them to take over Grass Island.
It's really the makeover of Grass Island.
You know,
Just making sure nothing.
may I? The second item in special funds relates back to Mike's report earlier on the issue with Baldwin. Now here, the vendor, we cut a check to the vendor for $308,000. Is any of that involved in this challenge because of the problems that resulted from inadequate replacement?
I don't know.
Is that a recovery item to be recovered, or? And why do we pay it if we were caught in the middle of an issue with them? Why was $308,000 check cut for them?
Without having the requisition in front of me and the building committee reviewing it, I'd have to.
Because
there's-
So
Say if
I don't
there's the
exactly
issue,
know. It
and
could have been
it's-
work that was already complete, which was
Yeah.
It could
taking
be
out the
totally
existing
could be-
windows. and
Right.
Could be a
prepping
totally
it.
separate issue.
Right.
Are they separate issues?
It could be, I do not know.
Yeah.
It
It could be, but I don't know what that, it says it's application 4. So I don't know what was
Yeah.
included in application 4.
It just struck me with all that we were saying.
Refresh my memory, that bill wouldn't get paid unless the standing building committee had
That's
approved it
correct.
at their meeting.
Well, they held to.
Yeah, well, most
And I don't
recently,
know.
this invoice
Yeah.
date is 8/31. So it may well have already been approved. but-
It could have, could it have been the work that was already done and the windows? Yes, it could have been. And then the walkthrough happens for substantial completion and requisitions out and everything. It was a mechanism on the window.
Yeah,
That's basically what it was, and until they did the actual inspection of it, then they find out. The point is that 308, we're not going to be spending any more. It may be cut, but it's,
Yeah.
and there's always retainage on the project.
Correct, there is a
So if there has to be a
retainage.
replacement, the product, it's not so much the product that has to get replaced, it's going to be the labor that has to get replaced. And that would be
all
part of the,
all
that'd
the
be part of
sign-offs
the
are on
retainage.
the requisition before it's processed,
Right.
so, it would-
Yeah, it's a good question.
yeah, without really looking into that particular one.
But the building committee, the architect, they look at it.
Could have been approved
Mm-hmm.
ahead of time.
Or simultaneously, more
Correct.
so. Probably.
Quick question on warrants. Page 11, John Deere, 444K for $113,000. That was prior year encumbrance. Was that out of the capital? Was that capital account? Or was that a bonded project for the John Deere?
That was a capital
That's what I
line
thought.
item. Mhm.
Okay, that's what I thought. Oh, and then,
And so, and the reason that was purchased is because it was a prior year encumbrance, otherwise all other capital items are still on hold.
Oh, right.
But that was money
That was prior year.
Prior year,
Yep.
so that those have been approved going forward. This year's money would not have been approved.
Good. On page 58, town properties, fire alarm testing. My question is, how many fire alarms were tested for that amount, if there were more than one, do you know? Is that, I'm assuming that's not for one fire alarm test, right?
I don't think it would probably come
What
to
page?
all of them, but
Yeah,
don't know.
okay.
Can look into that.
Thank you. That's it for me. Anyone else?
Yeah.
What do you got, Ken?
I have one on page 23. I'm just curious about that. On page 23, Facebook ads, $500 for golf course. Facebook ads for golf course,
Social media.
social media. Is that the total amount we appropriated for that?
No, that was a question that came up earlier. We actually had a $500 budget for that, and I think we doubled that. Is that what I think we looked at that just
Yeah, it was
recently.
advertising.
Yeah, so I have that question already on my list to find out. Joe knows why we doubled that, but
You got it.
I had another one.
and again, the golf course is like any other department, you know, they're able to go over that appropriation as long as they do not go over their bottom line appropriation without any special. So I've been talking to them
Transfer.
regularly and so that they can, keep on that.
I have one on page 34.
What page, I'm sorry?
34?
Wait a minute. I think I'm probably wrong here. Next Gen Corporation. Probably what the wrong number.
Next Gen
Next
Solutions?
Gen, 15,000 for some service contract. I wanted to know what the service contract was, but I wrote the wrong page now.
You got it.
You got it?
It's page 34. Third
This-
from the
it
third
is-
from the
oh, I'm
bottom.
looking at 33, pardon me, yeah. 34, $15,500 maintenance service for Next Gen Solutions.
Yeah, that's in the police, but it is a budgeted line item in the police department. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you exactly what that is. I do remember seeing Next Gen for that amount in the budget.
Next Gen.
But I could certainly find out exactly what that's for. Like I said, off the top of my head,
Police,
I don't remember.
Yeah, there's a lot of police in this whole.
Right,
Yeah,
that's the whole
there's,
thing.
there's,
Yeah,
that's the
the
second.
police department has a significant amount of annual contracts.
Right. Service contract.
Right.
Service contracts. This just happens to be one of them.
Okay. Any others? No? Medical benefits. We had a good experience month for our employees as well as our finances. So we're now reversed. What we thought was a minor deficit for this year is now it's a surplus. Quick question. Now that we're 3 months in, I'm hoping the answer is the reason we don't see anything covered by ISL is because we don't have any catastrophic loss, catastrophic health things. But the follow-up question to that is, how many are getting close?
Two answers. We are always a month behind on catastrophic claims.
Right.
So I don't have September's
Numbers in.
information.
Right.
The latest we have is August. So we do have, I believe, 4 claims that are
Nearing.
getting there.
Nearing the
Yes.
stop loss?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Did we change this? I see the premium went up a lot this year. Did we
Yes, it
change?
did.
Did we change the stop loss level, or did we keep the same one?
No, we kept the same level. If you remember last year, we came out very favorably
Right,
last
right.
year.
That's
and
why the
we're-
premium went
And
up
we're
by
paying
so
for
much.
it this year.
Right.
So we had a savings on the regular health benefit side, and the largest increase in our coverage was in the ISL.
So to have kept the same premium, did we have the option of having a lower or a higher threshold rather before it would have
We
kicked in?
did talk about that during our meetings chose not to. I don't remember what the reasoning was, but it was a discussion we had with our, not would have been Sharon with us, you were there? Sharon might have been, just trying, I don't quite remember what the reasoning was, but we did look into that. It's something we would look into each year.
Okay, quick question. I actually neglected to ask this earlier with the Board of Ed, but are we monitoring how we're doing with the HSA since this is the first year of the HSA contract in place? Okay. Right. The only reason I ask that is we are a little bit ahead of where we were last year on the Board of Ed health medical benefits line. So I guess it's kind of unfair because we really don't have a baseline to work from with the HSA. I'm just sort of curious to know what kind of evaluation we're doing on the HSA. And again, with only 3 months in the can, it's probably a little premature, but
Right. Our consultant will kind of do that for us. It's hard for us to do that on our end,
right.
but we will
Keep an eye on it.
keep an eye on it.
Good. Anything else?
Yeah, I do. I know this has come up before, but the admin line on medical expenditures fluctuates a small amount. It strikes me as, I mean, that's not a fixed, we're not paying a fixed amount to the administrator to handle our claims. What is it that causes that number to vary?
I believe there's a fixed amount plus a percentage basis, so depending on the claims, that might go up and down.
So the number of claims that they process can produce a different amount they charge us for handling them?
Yes, based on the number of claims, I believe so. That's where you see the fluctuation. Otherwise, it's mainly a fixed fee.
Okay.
Yeah, and that
curious.
is much higher than we paid last year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
The monthly fee is significantly higher.
Anything else? Going once? Twice? What's that?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Is there a motion to approve the bills for the town in the month of September in the amount of $2,644,662?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? No. Committee reports? I don't think there are any. Old business? New business? Just for those of you, I know Ken was there this morning, I was as well. This morning, the Board of Selectmen approved the acceptance of the SAFER grant to add the additional firefighters to cover the shortage or the lack of the increased response time in North Guilford. The net effect to our budget this year, I think, is going to be about 115,000, or is that the number I heard this morning? 106,000. And we did hear that the fire department is doing their best to try to cover that difference, but they're not sure that they will be able to.
No, they can't. Not all of it. So they're going to have to, depending on how the department shakes out at the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
So it's a probability that they'll come to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance at the end of the fiscal year and ask for a transfer from either other departments or from fund balance.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay. Any other new business? Public forum? None? Beg the board's indulgence. Lou Federici has served on the Board of Finance for 12 years and will no longer, yeah, can you believe it? Yep. And he has decided that he wants to pursue other things, so he will not be sitting at this board. And I just wanted to thank Lou for his years of service on the Board of Finance. And we should have had a cake or some flowers for you, but we didn't do it. But I would ask that you gavel close the meeting this evening.
There we go.
But before you do that, this is election season, and there are several of us at this table who are running for election. So this board may have some significantly different composition a month from now. But I just also want to wish good luck to everybody who is running in the November election. So, and Lou, it's been my pleasure to serve with you, and you know the drill.
Good luck,
Don't you?
everyone. Well, listen, I got to say, Matt, thank you, and it's been a pleasure working with this fantastic board and with the staff and with the other elected boards. It's just been my honor to be part of this town and serve in this capacity. So with that, there being no further business before us, meeting is adjourned.
Good job.
Emphatic. That was emphatic.
That was nice, Matt. Well pounded. You're welcome. Didn't see that coming.
That's when it's best.
That's right. When it's best.